Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Rhyme of the Times for the week ending the 8th of November 2025. Reeves' surprise speech is meant to prepare and maybe to scare, with a hint of tax rises in the air. BBC in another tricky affair over a lack of editorial care. The world's now aware of Sudan's troubles and suspected genocide there. Lammy has another commons nightmare as the state of disrepair of our prison systems laid bare, with prisoners being released by mistake everywhere. The countdown to the budget is down to 3 weeks. The Chancellor's position looks weak, prospects bleak. In their manifesto, Labour's big goal was to achieve growth and financial control. But the British economy, on the whole, is in a hole, and Labour's tanking in just about every poll. So many election promises unfulfilled, and that Tory black hole may be not quite yet filled. And with high national debt and high inflation, and with growth still in a state of stagnation, and the welfare bill continuing to mushroom, Rachel Reeves' headroom has left her with not much room. She's a bit stuck, as if knee-deep in toffee, so she woke us all up to smell the coffee. Seemingly she's realised she had no place to turn, so poured out her heart from behind a lectern. On Tuesday over breakfast we heard Miss Reeves reading the UK's economic tea leaves, explaining what she's done and what might be to come. Some context and perspective, but pretty humdrum. The overall effect left the audience quite numb. Her words, though, of course, will have satisfied some. This was an unprecedented move to make, a budget scene setter over the nation's cornflakes. Reading between the many lines spoken, Reeves seems prepared to have an election pledge broken, going for broke because the country's so broke, taking more tax off the working woman and bloke. Not in so many words, nothing set in cement, but most think that's the message she meant to be sent. Over the years, BBC has produced great drama, but recently it's become the great self-harmer. Auntie has given her enemies bullets to harm her, with the sort of drama like that of Panorama. The news programme's piece of editing fusion caused confusion and gave the illusion that Trump clearly incited the insurrection on the 6th of Jan to mess up Biden's election. The edit, which has only just come to light, suggested Trump told his supporters to fight, inferring it would be America's death knell if they didn't march up the hill and fight like hell. In fact, the two speeches were 40 minutes apart. This second changed the context of the one at the start. Following so many recent BBC scrapes, this might be the hardest one to escape. Since the ousting of President Omar al-Bashir, chaos has reigned in Sudan for 6 years. But it was in April 2023 when the country spiralled uncontrollably. The promise of civilian rule turned to sand as armed factions sought to gain the upper hand. Only now are the true horrors being seen. Human rights abuses are horrific and obscene. On satellite photos of Darfur are large spots, blood stains on the terrain like huge ink blots, and signs of systematic blood spilling. Genocide's the only word that describes such killing. A war that the West doesn't mention a lot, of a country and people it has all but forgot. A foreign war that has so many complications doesn't much capture the Western imagination. So while the world focused on Ukraine and Gaza, it overlooked Sudan's unfolding disaster. British bobbies right now are like the Keystone Cops. That's the vision we're getting, and it never stops. Chasing jailbirds who didn't actually escape, but who exited prison out of the front gate. Prison officers getting their knickers in a twist, putting criminals on the incorrect list. So they are released by mistake. What a caper. All because they're still using pen and paper. No automation where computer says no, just a stressed out screw letting the wrong guy go. Last week in the Commons, Lammy tried to assuage a nation in a state of some outrage. The release last month of Hadushka Batu was an unforgivable gaffe, many argue. This week, while Sir Keir headed to the COP summit, Dave's credibility would further plummet. He became the first black person to face PMQs. By the end, he looked like a man standing accused. It certainly wasn't what he would have chosen to choose, having to face questions about criminals on the loose. After last week's efforts to have Commons uproar diffused, Dave seemed even more defensive and slightly confused. The Justice Secretary tried to make it quite clear he was all over it, nothing to see here. But with 260 convicts freed in error in a year, perhaps the public do have something to fear. Strangely, the guy the Tories sent into battle to ask Lammy the questions to get him rattled was James Cartledge, the shadow Defence Secretary, who shot the same questions at Lammy repeatedly. Dave obfuscated and then finally cracked. "Get a grip, man," he somewhat rudely shouted back. Meanwhile, 2 more criminals were on the run, just a week since Dave promised something would be done. One handed himself in almost straight away, while the other was recaptured on Friday. Sky News had the guy's rearrest video snapped as a tip-off to their reporter had him entrapped. And that's how a madcap week of mayhem was capped.